people, we're seeing business Bilal.
There we
We're
go.
seeing, we are getting a taste of business Bilal right now.
That's it. I'm not really a podcast. I mean, this is just something we talk about. This is actually what I do for a living.
He's got a day-to-day job here, right? Like,
kind
do
of.
not forget.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, most of it is walking in the park. So that's the other meme that's not going away. All right, welcome to another episode of No Investment Advice. You got Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi here. Unfortunately, Jack is a little tied up right now. He's got his Christie's auction going live as we speak. It's been going on. He was about to join, but unfortunately something's going on there, so he's attending to matters there. But he might jump on if he's able to. Trung, what's going on, mate? What you got to say about our boy Jack working with Christie's? What's going on?
Unbelievable. So I'm
Ridiculous.
just looking at Jack's Twitter profile right now. The top thing he tweeted out, he checks Christie's. It's happening at Christie's 3.0, which is their digital art auction. It's on-chain art platform. So Christie's is coming to 2023. We're talking about an organization. This company is from the 1700s. Like, that's wild, right?
You can see this his little video on screen here as well.
Well, dude, you know what you should do? Is go to Celia, Jack's wife. Go to her Twitter profile. She wrote an incredibly, it pulled on my heartstrings, man. It was like, that was beautiful. Celia, that was amazing what you wrote. Celia, for the listeners and the viewers that didn't see it, Jack's wife wrote about Jack's journey, which Jack has talked about on this podcast. 4 years ago, I believe Celia said 4 years ago to this day or this week, Jack went to his first kind of art show, and I think he made $80. He made $80. And he had to pay to be part of the art show. And now this NFT that Jack created at the beginning of the year, and the same week that his second child was born, they got invited to Christie's, which is one of the two biggest auction houses in the world. We will obviously, we will actually be talking about the Christie's and Sotheby's auction duopoly this episode. But congratulations to the Butcher family, huge day. Well, let me give a quick shout out before we continue. And and Jack might even hop in on this episode if he can. That'd be amazing. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Iron Brands, Simple Analytics. Thank you so much.
Not sponsored, but just a nice thank you.
Yeah, not a sponsor, but they used Barely AI and sent me a really nice email. And listen, I like a good email. And this was a solid email. So shout out to you. Thank you for being NIA listeners. And
respect the NIA family.
I appreciate this. It says huge NIA fanboy. That's huge with 6 U's.
It's like a Donald Trump huge, or is this a?
Hey.
All right, let's not get political.
Yeah, let's not get political, man. We don't give investment advice. We don't talk politics. All right, so I think other than that, 2 rules. And also, the last thing I'll mention before Bilal teases off when we're talking about this episode is we're going to be doing a little bit of traveling, all of us collectively, over the next month. So we're trying to piece together different episodes. This one will be very topical, but over the next couple of weeks, we will have more evergreen content, which I know some listeners like. So, that's it for me.
Yeah, some of our most popular episodes have been the one single topic episodes or the AMA. So we'll be doing at least 1 or 2 of those as well.
Yeah, we got one lined up for you real nice.
Yeah, right after this episode. So, yeah. Anyway, so you were mentioning Jack's Christie's situation there. So you mentioned just before we started recording, there's like a duopoly, you said, yeah? So Christie's and Sotheby's.
We'll talk about that, but also that you had lined up today. So we're going to talk about Google's AI play, Bilal's former employer.
Yeah, exactly.
We've actually made this a running joke. Like, it's worked out perfectly.
It's actually every episode now. Yeah. You have to get one in. So we're going to be talking about that. And also Twitter's new CEO, Elon, is going to be, is it chairman he's going to become?
Chairman and Chief Technology Officer. We'll talk about the arrangement's actually quite similar to how he's been operating at SpaceX. And then we'll talk about that after. But yeah, tee up the auction stuff, brother.
Yeah, so we talked about Jack's auction situation. I don't know too much about that world, except for I've heard of Christie's and I've heard of Sotheby's. That's all I pretty much know about that world. First, do you know much about that world apart from the duopoly situation? Like, have you ever interacted with them? Have you ever gone to an auction? Like, what's your level
The only auction I've ever seen was the one for the U.S. Constitution, when Constitution died. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
When the
I was a part of it.
died.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, dude. Oh, you threw in a couple of bucks, not investment advice.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But, I mean, it is a fascinating industry. Absolutely fascinating. And I'll tell you actually who covers it really well over the years. So I'm a big proponent of The Economist, my favorite weekly magazine to... Yeah, the thing about The Economist...
Not sponsored. Also not
sponsored. But I love
they were a sponsor of Creative Lab, to be fair, but they were back in the day.
Weird that they wouldn't do something.
I tried that cross sell, but no, I didn't.
It's
we're
almost
not doing
the perfect yin and yang. They give a lot of information that informs people to make
investments.
Almost
like investment advice that isn't actually investment advice.
We give the complete opposite.
Yeah, we give no facts.
So they got great coverage on Sotheby's and Christie's. Crispy's is kind of a tight name, man. Yeah.
Crispy's auction house.
So let me tell you a little bit. I got deep. Let me tell people about the auction market. I'm not going to bury the lead anymore. Christie's and Sotheby's, they dominate the auctions market. So I'm sure all the listeners here, if you haven't participated in these auctions, you're well aware, and you've probably seen the headlines like, hey, Picasso sold a $100 million painting at a Christie's auction, right? Like, that's what they do. So I pulled up some super interesting details from a bunch of Economist articles I've read over the years. But here are a couple facts I'll hit you with about the auction market, which is it's actually very fascinating. So it is a duopoly. Christie's and Sotheby's, they do about $8 billion each a year. And there's this line in the Economist article explaining when and why do these auctions happen. It's called the 3Ds. These auctions happen because of death, debt, or divorce. As in, people put typically paintings, but
in the will.
But within recent years, what's kind of happened with the market is, and you'll know this, man, we've actually talked about this stuff over, and obviously Christie's 3.0, like NFTs, is a kind of a new entry to the auction market, but it's typically paintings, but wines become a thing. Like, obviously, you probably have wine collecting friends, yeah?
Yeah, my uncle is actually a massive one. Funny enough, my Pakistani uncle.
Streetwear, jewelry, watches.
Like sneakers.
Yep, exactly, right? Like
limited supply. It's the same ideas, yeah.
Exactly, right? It's like
storytelling and limited supply. I think that's the two things that bring it together.
And I love that framing, because their job as these auction houses is, I mean, let's be honest, like, who are their customers? Super wealthy people, right? But they're also trying, for example, this Jack's NFT thing. So I think Jack mentioned to us that he had the lowest reserve price at Christie's history. Is it $8?
I mean, I know he was, because he wanted to keep it consistent. So I think it started at $8 or 0. whatever ETH. Yeah. And that's smart. I mean, because he's keeping consistent. It's also, by the time we started recording, which is only like an hour, or basically 2 hours after the auction started, it was already at like $5,000 or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, five
ETH, probably. Probably it was 5 ETH, probably, actually, yeah.
So actually, to your point, right, I think you nailed it. The reserve price is actually very interesting. The reason why you want a high reserve price, obviously, is as an auction house. The way auction houses make money, there are about 3 ways. It's called a buyer's premium. So they put a number on top of whatever the person that's consigning the product or artwork to them wants. So like, if I had a Picasso, I'm like, I'm only going to give it to you, Christie's, or to you, Sotheby's, if you can guarantee me a reserve price, right? And the reserve price is basically this auction house buying. They're not buying, but they're guaranteeing you. So if they don't sell at that price, they'll take the loss, right? And so they'll put a number above the reserve price, and typically it's something extra, which is called a buyer's premium. So they got to make a little bit extra on top, right? And then,
so wait, just to clarify, so that's Christie's or whoever putting up money. Yeah. That they're saying we're selling this for a minimum of X.
Exactly.
It's very different to eBay, which is my experience of auctions. You know, the opposite end.
Well, but it's really interesting, right? Because like, what's actually happened in recent years is people with super expensive artwork. Like, let's say you're a billionaire with a Picasso collection. You're actually playing Sotheby's and Christie's off of each other. You're being like, you're going to Christie's to be like, hey man, Sotheby's is guaranteeing me $60 million. I'm going to consign them this piece of artwork. Like, can you do better than that? Then Sotheby's will be like, okay, we'll guarantee you 65 mil, and if we'll eat the difference if it doesn't get to that level, right? And so obviously a lot of this involves at the art side, understanding the art market, and I mean, these individuals, the same way that, you know, we, like you, me, and Jack, like value memes, like the people out there valuing artwork, right? But I mean, both of these auction houses, they're from the 1700s. Like, these are extremely old auction houses. Christie's is from 1766. Sotheby's is from 1744. So they got a ton of brand equity built in. So if you're super rich, you trust them to be the people that A, can value your artwork, and B, can find the buyer for your artwork, right? So a very, very interesting business. And the other ways to kind of make money on top of the buyer's premium, which is what they put on top of the reserve price, and the seller's commission, because they also get commission for selling. Standard procedure. Everybody gets commission for selling. You get that. They do a lot of private brokering, and then they'll do a lot of like assessment for artwork to see how much it's worth. Like if you're in a state, you want your product, and you want your artwork appraised, because again, remember, debt, death, or divorce.
Yeah.
In a divorce, those assets are getting
triple
split.
D's.
Yeah, triple D's, right?
That's wild.
Yeah, I don't know. Any other questions on that front?
Well, no, I'm just. Have you read much about why rich people will specifically invest in art? Because obviously there's an actual interest for a lot of people. It's kind of like, you know, sophisticated, whatever you want to call it, rich people shit. The same way they like wine or whatever. But specifically the benefits of art, because at Charity Water, we did a auction of art in the past. We actually did a Banksy piece. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but we auctioned off a Banksy piece. And the head legal guy, general counsel, his half of his job.
The head legal general counsel.
Yeah, his name's Barton, great dude. Half of his job was working with us as the head of, you know, general counsel, and then the other half was working with people like Christie's and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure, because he was a big art guy. And I remember him talking to me about all these tax benefits related to, essentially, I think it's like the way you give money to a nonprofit. I think you get similar benefits with art, but I think there's even more specific rules. Do you know anything about this?
I'm not familiar with the tax benefits of it, but it sounds very plausible. And the other one, I'm going to ask you this.
Jay-Z?
Well, not Jay-Z, Sad, but like, I mean, people, listen, if you know when you tweet anything, you're going to get like the complete opposite response of what you're asking for. The money laundering is another one. I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't know how prominent it is, but listen, if you can have $10 million into something this size, this artwork, well, dude, actually, there's a Netflix documentary about a robbery at a Boston museum, and they're talking that actually artwork was huge for money laundering in the drug trade, because they would basically, okay, I want $10 million of drugs from South America. Here is my guarantee.
No investment advice,
no investment advice.
But you're right.
I mean, obviously, you're right. That seems logical, right? Like, if you could put $10 million into something like artwork, for listeners, I'm like doing the hand square thing.
Yeah. It looks like you're raving in the 80s there. But yeah, no, I completely get what you're saying. No, and again, this is not to take anything. This is a completely separate discussion to what we were talking about earlier with Jack's obviously doing like an amazing piece that I don't want to distract from that. But
I do not want to. I'm not distracted from that.
No, of course. But we have talked about when NFTs popped off originally, like 2021, I guess. Was that the year that things really went wild? There was a lot of discussion around are people money laundering through NFTs and stuff like that. And I didn't really understand how that would work, but it sounds like people had money to wash and they're able to buy something of value and then sell it to get ETH or Bitcoin or whatever, and then that money is kind of washed. But I don't fully I don't know enough about washing money.
Let's talk about the reality, right? Art returns pretty well. That's like certain art pieces and certain artists return extremely well versus equity markets or bond markets or real estate, right?
And it's an alternative asset, right? It's like it's not correlated to the economy.
Have you ever bought Masterworks? Have you ever invested?
No, but I know of the company, and I've seen like
can you
what they
explain
do.
actually what the company is for the listeners?
I think it's something like fractionalized art ownership, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what they call it.
They own like Banksy's and Picasso's, and they let you buy a fraction of it.
It's kind of like what we talked about, fractionalized NFTs and stuff in the past. So
exactly.
But you're buying, more traditional art, and you're getting exposure to the art market without putting up 20 grand or 50 grand, 100 grand yourself.
Exactly right. So, I mean, the way I'd wrap it is like, I think you nailed it, right? It's an alternative asset. And I mean, these markets aren't like, the art market is large, but it's just like, it's a sliver of somebody's portfolio, right? And then there's obviously the benefit of having it hung up in your living room. Although a lot of these shows now, like Billions and Succession, they talk about the free ports, which is like this duty-free area where people can store artwork and other valuables that don't get taxed. I think alluding to your tax benefits thing. But yeah, I mean, it's a way. Listen, it's a place to put a lot of money, right? And that money appreciates in a lot of different artists and artworks. But the other thing I'll say about the auction world that is quite interesting is, so they actually compete with galleries and private brokers. So a lot of their competition, so there is absolutely this duopoly of the mainstream auction houses, and they do 16 billion combined a year. They're all over the world, but they still have to go up against galleries, which know the up-and-coming artists really well, and so they're partnering more with the galleries. They have to do stuff like they're doing with Jack to attract a younger generation. And yeah, I just think it's super fascinating industry, man. I'd actually love to get an expert in that industry on this show.
Yo, at least I'd love to get Jack's opinion, having worked with them, and well, maybe when things calm down a little bit for him, we can get that from him. But yeah, that's a great wrap on that. I think we can move on to the next topic. But before we do that, I do want to shout out some of our new commenters on our clips. This is pretty jokes. So we shared this in the Telegram earlier. Let me see if I can share my screen without it messing up. If not, we'll ask Rafa, our editor, to put it in. Can you see my screen okay there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a great little clip of Trung explaining the horror movies from last week's episode, I think. So first of all, if you're not on Instagram, or if you're not following us on Instagram, it's Not Advice Pod, and I think the rest of NIA podcast, we couldn't get that handle. This is an old one. But yeah, some of these comments are incredible. Like my favorite couple here, bro, who the fuck are you and why are you giving people advice?
You gotta explain the one. This is so funny though. Like
because we always say we're not giving advice. It's also called Not Investment Advice
Pod. That's the handle. And it goes, Charlie explains why horror movies can be made on low budget. Cheech NW writes, bro, the fuck are you giving people advice for? Like,
and then,
what?
yeah, brother guy, what advice was given? And anyway, so these guys are messing around. This is also worth a mention. Rick Dagger, this young man is absolutely correct. I agree with every word. I'm from LA, etc. But just the fact he's calling you young man is already beautiful. So
there's a very high possibility, A, I'm probably a decade older than him, and B,
that's why it's hilarious. Yeah. Not that you're old, but you're also the oldest of all three of us too. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not old. Like, I'm getting there.
You got that Asian blood, man. You got that baby face look forever, I'm sure. So anyway, so the shout out to those people, and yeah, definitely go follow us on there. We're posting more clips. Rafa, our editor, is doing an amazing job with sharing those snippets, Rafa. Share it on your stories, etc. People will do it. That one already had like 14,000 views, and we've got like 50 followers. We've just started posting it, so we don't have anyone on there.
Think about how many people took that as advice, and now they're going out there trying to make horror movies on a low budget. Incredible.
Yeah, they're going to be making AI video movies next. So, all right, let's move on to the Twitter's CEO situation. Trung, I know you're obviously closer to this than I am. You're a Twitter power user.
I am a Twitter power user.
You've spoken to their team in the past, from my understanding. So what is your understanding of what is happening here? I think you mentioned Elon's done this in his other companies already, so this is probably the plan all along.
This is actually down your alley in the sense of this is the digital ad space, right? So
who is this, first of all? Who's
Linda
the new...
Yaccarino is the supposed to start in about 5 weeks now as Twitter's new CEO. But the responsibility split that Elon mentioned publicly in the tweets is he's like, I'm still responsible for system operations, infrastructure, product. And he officially has a title of Chief Technology Officer, and he's the chairman. She is the CEO. And I looked at the organization, the information. I had a good piece, or interesting dive into the organization this morning. And it looks like, so Twitter, before Elon took over, was about 7,500 to 8,000 employees. They're down to under 2,000 now. So I think about a third of those employees, 600 to 700, are in ad sales. So, and the ad sales situation, as you've probably heard, Bilal, it's fallen 40 to 50% year on year. But we have to put this in context that the entire ad market is down.
Yeah.
Like, this is correct, right? The entire digital ad market is down.
Everyone's down, I guess. But I think Twitter might have been hit harder because
it's
they're
definitely
more
hit
brand
harder.
advertising. We've talked about that before.
So brand advertising goes down more during recessions. It's first get cut, right?
Yeah, there's two. There's direct response, which is more like click my ad, buy this now, or like a conversion-based approach. And then there's a brand like eyeballs. So there's, if you think of a traditional marketing funnel, one is upper funnel, one is lower funnel. So Twitter can do both, but mostly I think they've positioned it as awareness, own a moment, the Oscars are happening, trend within people talking about whatever versus...
So this is relevant because Linda comes from NBC Universal. She's the chair of global advertising there. Obviously, they have a huge current events business, live sports, news, and she helped launch Peacock, which is the streaming service. So she has experience on I think they have ad-supported and subscription. So, well, here's my question to you, man. This is your realm. There's a lot of signaling going on here, right? Like, she's traditional advertising media. Like, she was handling $13 billion a year in advertising sales for NBC Universal. Like, is this to you like a signal that Twitter's like, you know what? We have tried and we are rolling out subscription-based products. Like, I got a subscribe button and more payments options. But at the end of the day, like, Twitter's revenue, 90% is advertising. Like, how does this signal to you?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I also think it is someone in the leadership team that complements Elon, right? So Elon is still doing product, technology side, and leading that. And she's going to be kind of like, I would see it as like the way Sheryl Sandberg, I don't want to directly compare because I don't know enough about her, but the way Sheryl Sandberg came in for Facebook, obviously very different situation. This is almost like a turnaround situation versus Facebook was just organically growing to a certain size. They needed to become this grown-up organization like Eric Schmidt at Google did for Larry and Sergey. But I would say similarly here, it's not that Elon needs a grown-up because he's, a very established CEO and experienced. But I think it complements his skill set. And more importantly, she comes from that world. And I think with both her digital and traditional experience, that is who you're selling to. So either way, you're selling to the same organizations, right? Massive Fortune 500 brands. And you need to speak the language. You need to understand how money is transacted. You need to know about the life cycle of selling that through. Sometimes it's like a year-long process to, you mentioned, I think you mentioned earlier, upfronts. I don't know if that was before we recorded or while we started.
Talk about. So I would love you to explain what upfronts are because somewhat someone brought up is like, so she was supposed to be the lead presenter for NBC Universal's upfronts just this past Monday, but I guess the news came out. Some people are saying that it was leaked or it was like some move to get her to commit to the role. I have no idea. All I know is that she was she was the global head of advertising NBC Universal. So what are the upfronts? And how relevant is that to potentially a future for Twitter? And the reason I throw that in, though, is like, you see tons of old digital media, Vox, BuzzFeed, Vice went out. We're talking the equivalent of bankruptcy, or Vice did declare bankruptcy, or in the case of BuzzFeed, they had to shut down BuzzFeed News. So, like, the digital media upstarts of 2010s aren't doing super fresh. Meanwhile, like, traditional cable, the cord cutting is happening very fast. Like, people are giving up the cable subscriptions, right? So the question I had was, Tucker Carlson, former Fox host, controversial Fox host, he hasn't even officially left Fox yet, but he's announced that he's starting a new show on Twitter. This may involve him like having some type of agreement to get off his contract with Fox. But do you see a world, while you, especially based on the fact that you used to work in this industry, where Twitter can eat some of that current news, live sports budgeting that used to go to cable? I don't even know how that would happen. But so upfronts on one end and that on the other.
Great question. So I'd say the summary on upfronts are, if you think of how big brands buy advertising, because I think a lot of people who haven't worked in that world or worked at a big company where you're part of that decision-making process, you might have a frame of how me and you might buy Facebook ads, right? Me and you go up, we're self-serve, we sign up for an account, we can set a budget of $50 a day, $100 a day, whatever, and scale it up from there. Once you start hitting a certain amount of money, you then get reached out to, right, by the team.
What number? Like
it varies. There's like SMB level, and then there's like the large customer sales.
Give a number. Like if you're
Facebook,
I'd
say like large customer, I know is probably like in the several millions a year you're spending.
Okay.
And sometimes like some of my clients spend over $1 million a year, and you might not even get in touch with people properly because the way it's also a little bit laggy, because if you spent that in Q1 this year, they've already allocated the accounts, and so you might only be in their team the next following year. So there's all these like stupid things that you wouldn't know unless you're working in it. And specifically for traditional advertising, that isn't how things used to work, right? You just don't open an NBC Universal advertising account and say, I want to spend $100 on TV. You go and speak to that. It sounds stupid, right? You're like, how?
No, you're right. It's like, hey man, we're gonna test out $50. We're gonna target Vietnamese Canadians on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So that is kind of when we moved from a world of like very much planned. You had what's called a media planner at an agency, and you had people at NBC to speak to, and you'd say, hey, I'm Nike, and I want to spend $1 million this year, and we're deciding where we want to put off, for their case, hundreds of millions or whatever. We want to decide, are we putting it to NBC, or are we putting it to Google, or are we putting it to Facebook, or are we doing it at Discovery or whatever?
And then so tell me more about this media planning bit. So if let's say that you're NBC Universal, and are you the media planner, or you're saying the media planner is going to NBC Universal?
Well, so there will be someone at the client or the brand itself. So Nike in this case. Yeah, so that would be a CMO, head of marketing, head of brand, whatever that org looks like. Then concurrently, you'd have often an agency working with you, and those agency will have media planners and stuff like that too.
Okay.
And then the third person is the platform, in Google and Facebook's case, or the publisher in the case of a TV channel.
Twitter. Don't forget Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. Exactly. You're right. Yeah. So and so the upfront, to answer your original question, what upfronts are is this kind of older concept that came from traditional advertising, from my understanding, which was, basically they would give you incentives to commit upfront a certain amount of money. So NBC would say, if you commit to $2 million a year spending on our platform in 2024, we're going to give you all these, value add benefits. You're going to get a team to work with. We're going to do brand lift studies. We're going to give you bonus impressions, et cetera, et cetera.
Dude, this is gold, man.
Yeah,
you could get the first Survivor slot. When people are watching Survivor, you will get stuff like that, right?
Everything's on the table. So that's why traditionally, like if Elon Musk comes into Twitter and says, I'm going to fire all the salespeople, he obviously hasn't done that, but if he did, that's what you're missing, right? By firing all those people, you're missing all the people that are actually having those conversations and negotiating with the brands and convincing them to do upfront with Twitter. I just want to put a number
here, by the way. I think the upfront numbers, they commit $100 billion plus a year. Does that sound about right?
I think that sounds about right. Yeah, because from the last numbers I looked at, and it could have changed, if about $600-700 billion is spent on ads a year, right? Across and that might have gone down. I don't know the number exactly, but just if there's $600-700 billion spent, if 100 of that is, let's say 10% or a little bit more, that is those big brands actually committing. That makes a lot of sense.
Let's do some napkin math. Some quick napkin math then. Twitter's revenue pre-Elon, $5 billion. It's tracking to about $3 billion this year. Big loss on the advertising side. You just mentioned this is a giant upfront pull. Obviously, Twitter missed probably a real effort this recent upfronts, but I think there's another round of them. But the whole point being, there's this massive pie, right? And for her to move the needle on that massive pie, does she have relationships to get Twitter $2 to $3 billion a year? Potentially, right?
But I think the relationships are the foot in the door, because people from that world would know her, they respect her.
Yeah.
But what she will need, and I'm sure she knows this better than anyone, is a narrative to say why Twitter versus everyone else. And one is the cable people, where she comes from, versus Google and Facebook. So if I was her, and I'm just literally thinking on the spot here, I'd be merging those two things. Google and Facebook aren't best for live events, like live TV and whatever. And TV is amazing for live, sports at least, but they don't have the discoverability, the measurement, the engagement, the two-way conversation. Exactly. And so the way we used to sell it when we did YouTube stuff, if you think of how you watch TV, it's kind of like a lean back approach. You're just watching TV hanging, but most people are second screening nowadays. They're on their phone, they're tweeting. So, and that's called a lean in. You're engaged, you're on the screen while you're watching this thing. So I think that's a nugget of where things would potentially go in their pitch.
Bilal has dropped somebody. Twitter.
Here we go. You got to get me on that.
Hire this man.
Exactly.
I love that you put on the Twitter CEO hat. You mentioned something actually about Linda. So she's known as the Velvet Hammer. So apparently she is extremely very tough negotiator. And you mentioned it something earlier about the parallels with SpaceX that we were talking about before we recorded. So Gwynne Shotwell, who joined SpaceX in 2002, 2003. She's the president of SpaceX now, but it's widely known within the industry, the organization, and just any media that covers the space industry. She runs day-to-day operations at SpaceX. She's the one that handles the government contracts. The Wall Street Journal had an article about the parallels with it looks like the relationship and the org chart that's being built. So Elon is still, I believe, the head of engineering at SpaceX. I believe that's his title. So he works on the engineering challenges, the most important engineering challenges. And Gwynne Shotwell has relationships with the government, with NASA, with private sector to do these massive SpaceX contracts. So, it looks very similar to what's being built here. And also, SpaceX is very well known to be like a very experimental organization. Like well, we just saw they blew up Starship, right? Is like they want to iterate quickly. And we're seeing it now. Twitter. The thing with Twitter, and I don't whether you're on it or not, is like, yeah, there's a lot of chatter because you see a lot of products get rolled out and then just taken away like shortly after, and they're testing quickly, right? Like the speed of iteration is going very fast. There's gonna be a lot of L's. Like they've
definitely launched. That's the one thing I'll definitely give them is they've launched so much in such a short period of time.
Has everything hit? No,
definitely
right?
not.
Like,
but I respect that they've been shipping
right?
stuff. Definitely.
And it does provide a new energy to it. And listen, there's going to be a lot more of these launches that don't end up working out. But I think the key is, to your point, can Linda Yaccarino sell a narrative to these brand advertisers, right? And a bit of that, then now there's a balance. There's a bit of a balance where you can't be iterating too quickly and like doing, you can, but it's going to be harder to sell a narrative if things keep changing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll also say beyond the kind of the product evolving on the ads product side, that just being objective needs to evolve a lot too, because the first stage is getting parity with the two main players, Google and Facebook, or Google and Meta, with certain things. And I won't bore people with all the details, but things around measurement, like just the way, just from my limited experience using it, is it's a lot more buggy, it's kind of clunky. Like you'll run a campaign and things will mess up a little bit more. There's just a lot less control, I find, versus, Google and Facebook just is way more advanced in the way they've developed the product itself.
Mind you, those two companies, $300 billion plus a year in ads, right? Like they're monsters.
They're exactly. So
different ball game. But you're saying the Twitter has to be at least have the same tooling, right?
Exactly. And specifically, one thing I'll say that's different to their launching, they're launching all these features on the consumer side, which is great, and they can roll that back, which I think can do some damage to the perception of it, especially with the Elon, discussion in the press and stuff. But whatever, that's going to happen. That's less damage, I'd say, because a few users who don't like it and don't come back, that is kind of the risk. But the difference between an advertiser not coming back is there's a lot more time lag, right? Like you're now going to have to convince them a year later to try it again. And the money life will make a big difference for them. So that's the part where I think they have to really hone in on why it's unique and why it's special and make an amazing product specifically for that. And maybe they do. And I don't use it enough to say otherwise, but from my experience, it hasn't been the best.
I love your narrative though, man. You're like, hey, I'm going to walk in here. You got TV. Bilal's like, you got TV. People, we're seeing business Bilal.
There we go.
That's we are getting a taste of business Bilal right now.
That's it. I'm not really a podcast. This is just something we talk about. This is actually what I do
Bilal's
for a living.
He's got a day-to-day job here, right? Like,
kind
do
of.
not forget.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, most of it is walking in the park. So that's the other meme that's not going away. But yeah, so anyway, I think that's really good on Twitter side. Anything else on that? I think it's cool that they've hired her. Excited to see what she brings, but I think it's beyond her. I think she's going to be complementary to Elon's skill set and knowledge. And if he gives her the platform to be able to actually go and develop the product they need on the ad side, I think there's no reason why they can't take a sliver of a massive market. But I think they've got a lot of work to do there. So Google's AI announcements. This happened at the end of last week after we recorded last week's episode. So we're not going to go into every single announcement, but what we will say is you saw the market cap shot up, right? So
how much? 150 bill?
Yeah, well, I saw a tweet on the day of where Tanay said Google added 55 billion market cap today after announcement at Google I/O. That's 400 million for every mention of the word AI in their keynote
people
presentation.
saw that meme. It was hilarious.
So funny.
You know what's hilarious? This is why I love the internet. I'm not saying the internet's infallible. Somebody literally watched that presentation and I'm going to cut every single time
AI.
Perpachai says the word AI. Somebody sat down and cut every single, and then made a super cut of it.
Well, I will say, I hope they used, and this again, not a sponsorship, but Descript, the app. Have you ever used Descript?
Oh,
started by Andrew Mason.
You told me to do it, yeah.
Yeah, the ex-founder of Groupon, super
it's one
smart
of the top
guy.
AI products. OpenAI invested in them.
Exactly. And so if anyone's ever editing a podcast, I don't really use it myself, only for sponsor reads, because I hate, if you've got filler words that you can take that out and stuff like that. But that can actually, you can upload the video and you can, I mean, probably because you can just search the word AI and you basically just go cut. You literally copy and paste it like text. It's really cool, actually. So anyway, so that was, I think the amount it went up in market cap may have been even more than that, but that's not really what we're talking about. It's really just about the fact that narrative-wise, I think this is the high level for me. They needed to do this, right? They're already lagging perception-wise. With OpenAI
explain
got a
why
head start.
Google I/O is a big deal, by the way.
Yeah, I think Google I/O is kind of the yearly conference where Google would announce. It's like the developer conference, but they'll always announce new products.
It's their big event, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like how Apple has their big event where they launch the iPhone and stuff like that in the past. But Google does that, and it's normally really good. And you'll see a lot of the Android stuff back in the day got launched there, and you always get to see the new stuff, which is why it's always been interesting. And because Google's got so many products, there's always, literally 100 announcements and stuff. So most of the time you miss most of them. But for this one, it was all centered around AI. Understandably, it's the hot topic of the industry. One thing I will say, though, is there's kind of obviously a joke about every startup throwing the word AI into their company to get their market cap or their valuation
AI.
up. Exactly. But I will say, I mean, Sundar has been literally saying this at Google I/O for a while.
For years, literally for years.
Google is an AI company. They've been saying AI company from before the recent hype cycle. Now, we'll get into that actually in next week's episode, which is an AMA. One of the AMA questions was about the AI hype cycle, how that compares to other stuff we've seen like crypto and stuff like that. So I will say Google is genuinely, I mean, Google, people forget, again, I'm obviously a little biased there, but just trying to be objective. Google has been an AI company for a while. It's not like OpenAI invented AI, right? Like AI has been around for a while.
Well, the GPT, the language model, was a paper written by Google Brain.
Exactly.
And DeepMind is owned by Google.
Yeah, and people, like, just the simplest example, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this already know this, but when you're searching for Google, the suggested search is, of course, AI, right? That is, when you type it in Trung and then it fills in fan dating.
Trung fan network.
Trung fan, yeah, exactly. Or they're like, is Trung fan single, for those thirsty ladies on the internet,
Whoa,
or thirsty guys, 2023.
Rafa, you might have to edit that. You might have to edit that.
But, the suggested search is obviously AI. So, again, that's not Chat GPT. Chat GPT is incredible, right? It takes things to another level.
We're going to address this next week.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, man, dude, you have to think about it the same way. This is the analogy that Benedict Evans, former venture capitalist at Andreessen Horowitz, and now just tech analyst in general, always says. It's like in the late 70s, when Oracle created a database, they're like, oh my God, wow, you're a database company. Well, guess what? 2 decades later, there's no such database company. Everything's a database company, right? It's like the same thing with AI.
Yeah, it's like saying a tech company or
you're a mobile
software company.
Yeah, it's just
like people don't think of Facebook as a software company, or an app. Like Facebook is an app. Like if I explain that to my mom, she's super confused. She's like, I'm using Internet Explorer or something to access Facebook, and I'm like, that's a web app, like it's in your browser. If you put it on your phone, so it is interesting that we talk about this all the time on the Web3 front. In the past, it will become mainstream when you don't use the stupid language, like, this is an NFT, this is whatever.
Everything's an AI company. But I think the point you're bringing up, though, is like, specifically is generative AI, and we're talking about the most recent hype cycle. When are they integrating text to image. When are they integrating these large language models into their consumer products? I mean, the presentation, right? It says right there, you got 6 products with over 2 billion users, right? So Google Search, Android, Drive, YouTube, what are the other ones?
Did you already say Chrome?
No, I didn't say Chrome yet. And there's one more. I got a picture here.
Say Gmail, Search, Chrome, Android, YouTube?
And Drive, Android, Gmail.
Maps?
Yeah, there you go. Gmail.
Yeah, there we go, yeah.
And here, they have 15 products with 500 million users. Ridiculous.
Man,
Ridiculous.
and we talk about this all the time. It's the theme of the show. We all obviously are fans of this distribution, and we've talked about how not just Google, Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI too, because they are partnered with Microsoft. They've got a massive investment from Microsoft. They can now just plug in to products. If you're using PowerPoint, you're going to have this this distribute. If you're using work, Slack or whatever, there's going to be Microsoft Teams. You've already got integration there. And so similarly with Google. So let's just call out a couple of the announcements that were kind of interesting.
You don't even have to do a screen share. Let's just walk through.
Yeah. I'm just going to, because I'm going to read this off my phone. So we've got Bard, obviously. Bard is the ChatGPT competitor. Have you used it? What do you think so far? Because
I haven't used Bard yet. I've heard mixed reviews versus ChatGPT.
Did you listen to All In last week?
Yeah, I did.
They did a whole segment on it.
They're very split on it, right?
And so I would just, again, I know we joke about the Google thing, but genuinely, I'm actually the most, to all my Google friends, I'm the most, what's the word? Where I'm like, oh, this is terrible sort of thing. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of right now. And to the outside world, I'm obviously kind of defending Google a lot of the time. I'm normally kind of in the middle because most people at Google are overhyping Google stuff, and outside, I think people underestimate it in this space specifically. So I'd say I'm kind of in the middle, but my genuine opinion on it is ChatGPT generally, for most of the stuff I've used, works mostly better. But there are some things with Bard that I was like, wow, that was so much better. And
for example,
not for real, some of the real-time stuff, they've got access to Google straight away, so it's more up to date. Maybe ChatGPT 4 has more of the new stuff. We've used the plugin or whatever.
The plugin has access.
But Google has Google's data, right? So you get access to all this stuff, which is very good. And so even now, I'm planning a big trip. I'm using it for stuff like that. Like, tell me things to do in this region. Oh, no, more off the beaten path, 5 miles away from the beach, blah, 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 blah.
How do I find somebody with a flower shirt in this city? That's a callback. If you've been listening
if you know that reference.
NIA, there you go.
There we go, exactly. So for stuff like that. And then the second thing I did, health stuff. I was like, wow, because I'm literally saying, is there anything in the medical literature that mentions this? Is there a link between these two things? And I was really, because I just finished the Peter Attia book. We were talking over text about that, Outlive. We could do that on maybe another episode. But so a lot of the science was kind of fresh in my brain. I was almost like testing it from what I'd read. And I was like, wow, this is a summary of like basically a whole chapter that I just read on like one specific thing. So for stuff like that, I was like, this is really, really good. And so the hope is it gets way better, but there are some hallucinations that I was seeing that I was like, oh, this is completely off.
Yeah.
And so but that happened to ChatGPT too. So I'm using both of them, trying to be objective. I still find myself going back to ChatGPT, but Bard is like very quick. That's another thing. It's, quick, like kind of like Google search versus ChatGPT. It doesn't do the whole generating thing. It just like hits you with the answer.
Just directly into your eyes.
Yeah, it's basically I'm feeling lucky. Exactly. It's the I'm feeling lucky button straight away. So I think Bard's something to watch. The other stuff that I think is interesting, obviously in Gmail, this is a no-brainer. Google releases help me write an email, but you can just say, write me an email of XYZ, and it will pretty much do it. And then you could adjust it like you do in ChatGPT. And say, or barely AI.
Yeah, or barely
say, make
AI.
it friendlier, make it longer, make it shorter, add in these sort of language, be angrier, whatever. And it works pretty well. For stuff like that, I think it is going to work really well. I hope Superhuman adds that integration. I saw they launched some...
They have an AI product, yeah.
They said they have, but I'm waiting for access to it.
They already are an AI company. Everyone
They already are. And I would love, because honestly, I still pay for Superhuman like a real tech boy, but it's actually the best email app for me. I personally really value it. And I hope they add that in as well. The other thing I'd share was the Bard Adobe Firefly announcement. Did you see this?
Where they do, you can, because before they've had Magic Eraser, right? Like this is part of the Google's AI. A few years ago, they introduced like Magic Eraser where you can erase people from photos. But I think this Firefly agreement with Adobe is text-to-image stuff, right? And like really edit photos.
Exactly. And so the Magic Editor, I think there was a revamp to that too. And then the last thing I'll just mention, there was just like this big integration with Adobe, which was something about augmented reality. I think that's best seen over a video, so we can throw it on a screen here as well. But did you see the Google Maps thing? That was very cool. That was essentially, you could say, show me this route from, Prospect Park to Central Park. And they've basically created this AI visualization. You can like zoom out and preview your like route from above. It's kind of like Google Earth imagery, I'm sure, merged with more of the user-generated content, I think, as well, or the general Street View stuff. But it just kind of like flies through, and it's actually
really visually
really interactive.
Amazing.
Yeah, so they're using all of this stuff. It's like they've had a lot of this stuff before, and they're weaving it together, right? And it's the same way. Oh, the last one actually that was really cool was the Google Translate stuff. So that was interesting because let's say we want to translate like Mr. Beast does. Mr. Beast has a whole strategy around turning English content into Spanish, Mandarin, etc. And he has a whole team developing all of that for him.
And each of those channels has tens of millions of subscribers.
Insane. But let's say we're not Mr. Beast and we want to do our own stuff. This will apparently be able to translate what we're saying right now to another language and even adjust the lip movement. So it's kind of, obviously it's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be closer than just a dubbed thing that you'd have, manually doing it. So stuff like that is pretty mind-blowing just to see that actually work, at least in a demo. Let's see how it works in real life. But yeah, what did you think from the outside?
Not all these products they're going to be released
live,
by the end of the year. Like drip through. So I have one comment. I have a question for you, actually. Do you know how on Google Maps, when you're navigating traffic, it will be green, yellow, or red to indicate if there's traffic or not? Do you know how Google comes up with that? Because I just found out.
I've looked at this before, and I think it's two things. One is people's phones and seeing how fast they're moving in traffic and stuff like that, and aggregating that, which is kind of crazy. Because they can see if enough people on the highway are going at 12 miles an hour, that means there's traffic.
But literally, they're using, if like you're an Android user, they're aggregating anonymously.
Yeah, and I wonder, I'm not even sure if it's only Android or if you've got like Google Maps on your iPhone even. I'm not sure how that works.
That's a good point.
And then secondly, they bought Waze, and my understanding was, I'm pretty sure they've weaved in Waze's data in as well, which makes sense because that's user generated. People say there's a build up on here. So if you combine those two together, I actually find it in most places I go anyway, pretty accurate. Like in LA or something where you get mad traffic.
Red, you're like, you're
done.
about to hit that red.
I don't see that often since the don't drive here.
It is, fair enough, man.
But that's pretty incredible. It
is incredible. I also had two quick things about the I'll add two things that you didn't mention, and then I'll just give my thoughts that you asked for. The two things I'll mention is the search itself. So they are integrating AI into search, but the way they're integrating is not the way that Bing has done it. It's not going to be chat first. They're going to have Bard that we discussed. That's a different kind of vertical product. The search AI stuff will be, if it's a commercial search, if you're looking for a bike, they're serving you the ads. They're serving you the sponsored, right?
That is interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already
they know. They're like, listen, we're doing it the way that, I'll be honest with you, man, I like the Google search box. I don't even know, like, ChatGPT to me is a totally different thing, man. I still have that behavior. Might change. The other thing, though, is like, if it's a non-commercial, you mentioned it, they actually used the exact example you said, planning a trip. If you're searching for something that's not directly commercial, like, yes, you can sell ads against a trip plan, obviously. Like bookings.com, we talked about in previous episode, is one of the biggest spenders on Google, like $10 to $15 billion a year. They'll buy any travel keyword. But if you're like, hey, listen, I'm doing a 6-week trip. My son likes outdoors. My daughter likes museums. Can you just make it all for me And yeah, you will get an AI answer, which integrates primary sources. And then you could probably plug ads in there somewhere. But
I was thinking the same when I was using both ChatGPT and Google Bard for this to compare them. And like you said, even that query, which is very helpful to have the chat assistant helping you. If I was saying, I want to do this beach in this part of Italy, whatever, that was a perfect time to upsell me basically an activity. Say, oh, you're going to the Amalfi Coast. Would you like a day trip to Capri?
Yeah.
And that would be a paid for
thing. I was giving away his vacation.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Yeah, exactly. So it's all fresh in the mind right now. So yeah, that one, I mean, I would 100%. I mean, the next step for me was asking what are day trips to do? And that is a commercial query. And if there were ads there, I don't want ads there straight away, but that someone's going to have to figure out how to make money from this.
Makes a lot of sense upsell, right?
Yeah. Now, the last thing I was saying, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Google Docs. So they have integration with Slides.
Oh, yeah.
Word. Oh, sorry. What's it? What's the Google Docs? Word?
Docs, I think. It's just called Docs.
Yeah, Docs.
Yeah.
And then, but the whole thing is called
Slides.
Workspace. Yeah, Slides and Sheets. AI integration there, same that Bing did, and Microsoft did with Office Suite. And then something we didn't mention, but I will bring up, was the Google Memo. So Google Memo by a single engineer, this is not representative of the entire company, was leaked about 2 weeks ago. And the thrust of the memo was that these large language models are largely all going to converge, and the winners is actually going to be open source, because you have way more people experimenting on those platforms, doing stuff locally on phones, and like doing stuff that you just wouldn't even think of doing if it's all centralized, right? And the takeaway from that Google memo, everyone in tech industry is talking about it, is that Google engineer said that the winner will likely be, as of today, and he's looking at it, he thinks the winner could be Meta. And the reason is Meta has an open source large language model. They quote unquote leaked it, but a lot of people think that in the past Meta's actually leaked open source things because they get all the benefits, right?
Yeah, so it's like hype beast, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're like, everyone's using a really proprietary thing, but yeah.
But now they get to use all of the advances and innovations that are made on that open source model, right? They don't have to pay anybody a licensing fee. It's open source. And their large language models, LLAMA, Solama. And what's interesting is this has been said by a lot of analyses. It's not original to me, but it's like you commoditize your compliments, right? So Facebook wants to make large language models a commodity, because if the large language models are a commodity, and we've talked about this before, you have an edge if you have proprietary or sick data. And guess what? Facebook has proprietary data on 3 billion people. So highly beneficial if they can make large language models a commodity. And Zuckerberg on an earnings call even called it out. He's like, listen, we have different motivations with large language models than Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. They want to sell cloud services. They want to have an API. It's like, we don't care. We want people to standardize. Like, obviously, it's not philanthropic. They want people to standardize, so it's
so they use their stuff, of course. Yeah.
So, or they don't have to pay a lot, and then they get the advantage. But that was a takeaway. So great. Open source is a big deal.
Yeah, I think we could probably do a whole episode, honestly, on the kind of future stuff about open source versus those players. But that's a good little preview into that, because I think we should cover that at some point. All right, I think we should wrap this one here, man. Anything else on that before we close out?
Nothing to add. Hopefully Jack's thing's going well. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm sure it is going well. But
congrats again, Jack and Celia and the whole Visualize Value family.
Yeah,
everyone go give him a congrats and support our boy. If you're in the market for a piece of artwork, go and make sure you're bidding on that, because by the time this comes out, I think it's still live. The auction will be a few days.
Okay.
So either way, incredible.
Not investment advice.
Definitely not investment advice. But if you want to invest in art and that's your own choice, then you should go and check out what he's doing. No, but all jokes aside,
out all the caveats.
Yeah, all very, very. It's pretty incredible to see what you've done, Jack. I know you're not on this call, but mad respect, mad love to you guys, and we know from close up, like how much you've been hustling on this and the kind of struggles you've had early on, trying to be just a straight up artist, selling your, basically spending money to become an artist yourself. And now, the hard work has been paid off. So respect.
We're looking forward to hearing that. We can't wait to hear the full breakdown of this. 100%. But yeah, awesome, man. Amazing.
All right, awesome. All right. Thanks again for everyone support. Over the next few weeks, as Trung mentioned, we are going to be mixing it up. There'll be times where all three of us aren't available, and we're going to have two of us like we're doing today. We're going to do some AMAs and stuff, but we'll still be bringing you episode every single week. So bear with us through the summer period, but we'll be bringing you the heat.
With us.
Barely with us, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your support, and we will see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.